Being at this beautiful ceremony to celebrate trees is a high point of my journey that started before I began my scientific career. When I was a little girl, I loved to climb the maple trees in my front yard. And there in the treetops, held in the strong limbs of those big, silent trees, I felt very safe, very protected, hidden from adults, and yet seeing far and wide. As an adult, I chose to study the science of that hidden world of the treetops, the forest canopy, the so-called last biological frontier. Over the past 30 years or so, scientists have invented many ways of getting up into the forest canopy, mountain climbing techniques, construction cranes, and even hot air balloons. We have learned that the hidden world of the forest is very different from the forest on the forest floor. It is exposed to more sunlight, more heat, and more wind. Many animals live in the forest canopy for all or part of their lives. This three-toed sloth can hang for many hours with his strong claws. Snakes can perch on twigs, waiting for hummingbirds to fly by. Thousands of species of insects live in the forest canopy. Many of them have not yet been named scientifically. However, my husband, Jacques Longino, is an ant taxonomist. He classifies and names insects, especially ants, and when he proposed to me 30 years ago, he told me that he would name a treetop ant after me. And he did. This is Procryptoceras nalini, and we have two children, August and Erica, and he named ants after them too. So we are a very happy canopy ant family, and my family is here, if you would raise your hand. However, I am very interested not in the ants, but in the plants of the canopy. These are called epiphytes. Epi means upon, phyte means plant, so plants that grow on other plants. They get support from their host trees, but they don't get nutrients or water from them. Instead, they have specialized leaves that can take nutrients and water in from the rain and the mist. There are over 28,000 species of these epiphytes. For example, bromeliads that live in the tropics and mosses that live in the temperate forests. My research has shown that these epiphytes are ecologically very important, even though they make up a very small part of the whole ecosystem biomass, only about 10%. They function like sponges. They're very efficient at taking nutrients and water from the mist and rain and holding on to them within the ecosystem. For example, about 60% of the nitrogen that comes in mist and fog is held within the canopy because of these epiphytes. They are also important for birds. Over 120 species of birds use canopy plants for their food and to make their nests. Over 30% of their visits to trees use some part of an epiphyte. So these epiphytes are what we call keystone species. Even though they're very small in terms of their size, they're very important in terms of their function. But although forest canopies support such abundant, such diverse, and such beautiful life, my research has also shown that they are frighteningly fragile. Epiphytes need a very long time to respond to disturbance. I removed the epiphytes from these branches over 30 years ago, and it is only now that they're beginning to recover. So epiphytes take a very long time to grow back. Scientists also predict that global climate change in the tropical forests where I work will result in longer dry seasons. And this is also this will also have a very negative effect on these epiphytic plants. Human activities such as mining and agriculture harm the trees, yes, but also these diverse epiphytic canopy communities. People are more and more distant from trees and nature than they have ever been. And so I must ask myself, as a scientist, what can I do to try to help the trees and the life that they support, especially the human life that they help support? Well, I cannot stop global warming or deforestation myself, but I can communicate what I know and what I have learned about trees to others, which will promote a greater awareness of the importance of these canopy communities, and in doing so, perhaps inspire greater care and greater mindfulness of them. To do this, I started by expressing the extent of deforestation in ways that people might easily understand. I use the tools of satellite imagery, which takes pictures of the Earth's vegetation from space. Here is a picture of your beautiful country. Here is a picture of Bolivia in 1984 and 2006. The satellite sensor uses different colors to show different wavelengths of the vegetation seen by the human eye. The dark red here is primary forest. The lighter red is agricultural land. Foresters on the ground can measure and calculate the density of trees in each of these land types. And so, by multiplying the density of trees by the area that each type covers, I can calculate the number of trees that are on this landscape. By using imagery of worldwide satellites, that is, of the whole Earth, I can find out how many trees there are per person. That is, in 2005, using information from NASA, I found that there is about 400 million hectares of forested land of different types. The number of trees was about 400 billion, and the world population in 2005 was about 6.5 million. And so, the number of trees per person, I could calculate, is 61. Is that a lot or a little? Well, it depends on how many trees we use in our lifetimes. Unfortunately, we humans use about 25 trees per year. So this means the world is not at a sustainable state for forest cover. My next step was to make people aware of the vital importance of trees in their lives. I decided to try to link the ecological values of trees and the canopy that I had learned from my research to other values in society: physical values, aesthetic values, recreational values, religious values, and social justice values. By linking these two, I felt I might have the possibility that people would become more aware and become better stewards of these remaining trees on our planet. Well, what are these values? We are very aware of the physical values of trees. We value the fruits and spices that we eat, the corks for our wines, the lumber for our houses, and the newspapers that we read. Trees are symbols of economic value. We find them on the coins and the bills of over 60 countries in the world. They are very important in human health, so they have human health value in terms of the drugs that they produce. Taxol is a drug that was recently discovered. It's derived from the bark of the Pacific yew tree, and it is very effective in treating cancer, ovarian cancer. Trees, of course, satisfy our aesthetic values in art and in music, and they bring us a sense of our emotions, of knowing about the passage of time with the turning of the seasons. What about play? Well, perhaps we can bring in the recreational value of trees by creating Treetop Barbie. So my students and I created Treetop Barbie along with a little notebook that describes all of the mosses and lichens that live in trees in the Pacific Northwest. And so Treetop Barbie speaks to the young girls about the values of trees in terms of their ecology and their sense of fun. Religion is a value for over 80% of the human race. Trees are spiritual symbols in all of the world religions. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge in the Old Testament that we read. Buddha achieved enlightenment sitting underneath the Bodhi tree. By reading the holy scriptures of the world religions and identifying the verses about trees, I was able to create sermons on trees and spirituality. And so I have been going to churches and synagogues and temples, giving sermons not just about trees and science, but rather about the links between trees and spirituality. And I have found a great openness in the congregations to whom I speak to become better stewards of the trees and of the earth. The values of trees and nature, I think, are probably the strongest in people who are furthest away from them, especially those incarcerated men and women in prisons where nature hardly exists. In 2005, I created the Sustainable Prisons Project to bring nature, science, and sustainability to prisons in Washington State. I began with a lecture series for inmates. They were extremely interested in trees, in arboriculture, and in forest ecology. And that led me and my colleagues and my students to start other projects behind bars: organic gardens, composting, recycling, and beekeeping, which now exist in 7 prisons in Washington State, and this project is moving across the country. The inmates are now helping us with research and conservation work. They help us to learn how to grow mosses for the horticultural trade, that is to florists, in order to reduce the collecting of mosses from old-growth forests of the Pacific Northwest. They are raising endangered plants and animals, the Oregon spotted frog, the Taylor checker-spot butterfly, and 16 species of endangered prairie plants. This is to help restore the broken ecosystems in Washington State, and in doing so, to restore the broken parts of their own lives. My students and colleagues and I, with this project, have learned that helping the biosphere lifts people from darkness into light, from despair into hope, even in the darkest and the least hopeful of places. My exploration, then, of the hidden world of the forest canopies that started when I was a little girl has taught me at least 3 things. First, that canopy plants and animals have great ecological value. More scientific work is needed in the next generation of researchers to better understand this last biotic frontier. Secondly, forest canopies relate to many human values. Ecological, yes, but also aesthetic, recreational, spiritual, and social justice. And third, if we look only to the scientific world, we will understand forest canopies and trees. But to conserve them, we must also open our hearts to understand and to feel how they participate in our lives. This is an image of the human heart. I see trees in the human heart. I have learned most of all that when we connect with trees and with other parts of nature, we connect with the deepest and most important parts of ourselves. With both science and emotion in our minds and in our hearts, we will better understand and conserve our trees. I look forward greatly to increasing that number of 61 trees per person to something much bigger, so that little girls in the future can climb into those trees and feel safe in their strong limbs, and will also work to make a world that is better and safer for trees. I thank the committee for your prize and for helping to keep trees in the hearts of all of us. Thank you.